This is written in the style of fiction, but it's 100 and true. It happened in 1987, 1988. The house I was renting was a murder house. Nothing to do with this story, but yes, I rented a murder house for a while. The people in the story are myself, Likas, and my best friend Joe. Anyway, on with the story. I'd been living in the murder house around 4 months with no issues. Apart from me and Joe constantly pranking each other. Me and Joe were still working as station supervisors on the London Underground. Anyways, we were great friends. We both 100 mutually friend-zoned each other from the start, and we both shared a love of pranks. Sure, they got a little out of hand sometimes, but it kept us both on our toes. At 26, Joe was almost 7 years older than me, and the only issue I had was that he would take my stuff sometimes. For instance, if I bought a pizza and put it in the fridge for when I got home from work. I'd come home, open the fridge, and see a note saying, Leica, I took the pizza. Here's press 20 buy another one, and there would be a 20 paper clipped to the note he'd written in the fridge. He did it with everything, mostly when he'd had a few beers. He once drank a quarter bottle of brandy I'd been saving, and I was so mad I'd punched him right in the arm as hard as I could. Joe had just laughed, and he had the kind of laugh that made me laugh too. Both of us never really took anything seriously for more than a minute. Anyway, the next time I bought brandy, I put the bottle in the drawer under my bed so he couldn't get it. I'd gone to bed and was sleeping when suddenly I was woken up by my bed moving. Joe was in my room, a little drunk, and he was carefully as a big clumsy drunk could be opening the drawer to get at my brandy. He saw me open my eyes and started laughing. Straight to sleep, Pep, he mumbled. I'm just here for the brandy. Somehow I managed to restrain myself from breaking the bottle over his big drunk head. I handed him the bottle with a tired, narky, just F King take it and F day cough, and he took it from me and stumbled out of my room. The next night, I shut and locked my bedroom door while I slept. I told him never to come in my room and wake me again like that. A couple of nights later, I was woken up by the sound of someone jiggling my door handle. Screw Joe's, I thought. The door was locked, so he couldn't get in. I ignored him for a while, hoping he would give up, but the door handle kept squeaking and moving. For fans, I very quietly crept out of my bed and put my hand on the lock. I was planning on carefully unsnicking it, then wrenching the door open and throwing myself at an unsuspecting Joe screaming like a banshee. It would be so funny. I silently stifled a giggle. I remained deathly silent. It wouldn't work if he heard me unlock and open the door. I had one hand on the little lock ready to twist it and the other hand on the handle. I counted in my head, 3, 2, 1. And right then I had a little thought that I was tired and didn't want to prank Joe after all. I'd go back to bed and pretend to be asleep, and eventually he would stop fiddling with my door handle. So that's what I did. I got back in my warm bed and went off to sleep. I was woken by Joe some hours later. Berlika, he shouted, knocking on my door. Come out of your room really carefully and don't freak out. Don't touch anything. I've already called the police. He sounded different to how he usually sounded. I carefully unlocked my door and slowly opened it. I looked outside of my room and noticed that every knife we had in the house was on the floor outside my room, arranged in a semicircle facing my door. We both liked to cook and had 2 sets of deadly sharp chef's knives and a set of steak knives. And yeah, we had a lot of knives, and right now they were all on the landing carpet pointing directly at my bedroom door. I asked Joe if he heard anything and if it was him trying to get in my room around 1 a.m. He looked at me wide-eyed and told me that he hadn't even been home all night. Spurting, his shift had finished at 11 p.m., and the night foreman hadn't shown up for his shift, so Joe had volunteered to stay and do a double shift. He'd finished around 6 a.m., arrived home to find a downstairs window had been forced open and lots of things moved around. The police arrived and weren't even that bothered because no one was hurt, and nothing had been taken, and nothing, art from the lock on the window, was damaged. But tons of things around the house were moved around, and the way they were moved was like in weird shapes and patterns. I shudder when I think of what could have happened if I would have wrenched the door open thinking it was Joe. Duty Days. Inspired to write. This is my true story. Duty Days. It is a dreadful, mandatory 24-hour watch manning and not leaving the ship. A massive aircraft carrier, to say the least. It was my turn in my department to stay on the boat, and that means I had to sleep there. Our sleeping quarters is 2 decks below the main deck. It had a little common area where people could watch movies or play cards. The rest of the space was what we would call coffin racks. Imagine 3 beds stacked on top of each other, about 3.5 feet apart, just enough for your elbows to be bent so you could use your phone. Well, my home was the middle rack on the far left of the room away from the door. The layout was designed like a big circle with little cul-de-sacs to fill in the space efficiently with beds. I'm explaining the layout to help you imagine what it could look like for this story. It was a holiday weekend. My ship had let half the crew on holiday leave, so those who had duty usually stood duty alone. Now, I don't have a problem with staying on the boat alone. I have done it plenty of times. Everyone is usually too tired to give a fuck about anything and just want to sleep. The ship is kind of eerie when it's empty, but it didn't bother me. I found it kind of peaceful, like nice sea with empty sidewalks. It's 11:30 p.m. I just showered and was ready to call it a night. I hop in my little coffin rack, close my curtains, and I doze off. It's extra quiet today. I can hear the ship moan, groan. It was subtle noises from the pipes and the background ship white noises. It was honestly helping me fall asleep. A few peaceful minutes go by and I'm finally relaxed. Bang, bang. Unknown loud sounds wake me, startled. I get up, turn on the lights and investigate. I see no signs of anyone or anything unusual. It's just the ship, I think to myself, and turn off the lights and try to go back to sleep thinking nothing of it. 2 minutes go by, bang, bang, closer this time. Pissed off thinking someone is fucking with me, I get up quickly, turn on the lights and jolt straight to the door. No one, not a soul in sight, not even footsteps the metal stairs make to get to our space. Still mad thinking someone is messing with my sleep. I check the space to make sure nobody else is in it. Discovering I was alone, I wanted to see what was making the noise. So I banged on the little walls of the beds, and it mimicked exactly the bangs I was hearing. After realizing what was making the bangs, I was a little thrown off. Thrown off because I was alone, and that means nothing around could make that sound. Tired, pissed, and confused, I get back to bed and play it off. Not 5 seconds of closing my curtains. Bang, bang. Louder and closer this time. I grabbed my wallet, phone, keys, and got the fuck out of there. I slept in my office space after with all the lights on. Haunted apartment. So this took place when I was in elementary. My parents got an apartment that thought it was nice and cheap. But I guess later we found out it wasn't a nice place to live in since my mom and dad also had a scary encounter in that place. Let's start in my side of my haunted experience in this apartment. One day on a weekend when me and my younger brother stayed home, while my parents were at work, we decided to watch cartoons in the living room and chat, when all of a sudden we heard all the cabinets from the kitchen just slam viciously, as if someone was furious. So of course me and my brother got scared since we knew we were the only one home, but we still decided to check what just happened. And when we checked the kitchen, every single cabinet looked untouched, as if no one was even there. So we told our parents later on in the day, but as kids they believed we were just making up a story to scare them. But soon my parents found out our story was not made up. My mom's side of her scary experience, I'll try my best to explain how she told us her story. So she told us how one day after finishing folding the laundry, she felt tired and decided to take a nap, and my little brother was with her that day and decided to take a nap with my mom. She told me I was in school around that hour. When my mom woke up, she said she saw human-like things crawling up the ceiling, and whatever it was, their skin was pitch black, and when it turned their head to look at my mom, she recalled saying their eyes were bloodshot red, so she closed her eyes because she was scared to see this demon-looking thing, and when she opened them back up, it was gone. Me and my dad told her she might have had a sleep paralysis dream, but my mom insisted it wasn't since she also recalled saying that when that thing was gone, my little brother hugged her and told her that everything was going to be fine, and he saw it too. My little brother said he doesn't remember that day or saying that to her. My dad's side of his encounter, this one is kind of a short story from his part, but he told us how one day he just heard banging on the door as if someone needed urgent help, but when he opened the door, there wasn't anyone there, and yes, it could have been a ding-dong ditch prank. But he said he opened the door immediately since he was close to it, and no one could have run super fast to the other side of the apartment to hide in a curve with the few seconds it took him to open the door. We heard rumors from the neighbors that lived right next to us before we moved to that apartment, and they told us someone was killed there, but we never found out if that rumor was true or just one to scare us off. But thankfully, we moved out and never had paranormal activities, things happening to us in our new house. sleep paralysis. I'm hoping to find someone who can help me understand what is happening to me. The sooner I can put a label on it, the sooner I can take steps to getting rid of it. A couple months ago, I had a series of weird experiences in my home. I would be laying in bed, and I would feel my bed vibrating or shaking. I don't live in an area that's prone to earthquakes, and my bed is usually pretty sturdy. Eventually, I was able to blow it off as my body was subconsciously shaking or something. However, the shaking didn't seem to stop, and it eventually escalated. Now, instead of shaking, I could feel sudden pressure on my bed, as though my dog had jumped up on the bed and was walking around the mattress. My dog sleeps in the same room as me, so this is not unheard of. However, when I opened my eyes, she wasn't on the bed. I tried to tell myself something in a dream had spooked me, and I freaked myself out, but it kept happening. Night after night, several times a night, always the same thing, the shaking of the bed, followed by the sudden pressure on the mattress and the feeling that something was walking, crawling over the mattress. I eventually sought the help of my religious leader, and my house was blessed. I stopped watching horror movies and listening to my horror podcast. If it was something spiritual, I wanted to make it clear that it was not welcome in my house. For a while, things got better, and I pushed the events to the back of my mind. Then last night, it happened again. The shaking, the pressure, the walking. I honestly am at a loss as to what to do. I do suffer from depression and anxiety, but I don't think it's caused by my mental illness. I've heard of sleep paralysis, but I don't know if that's what I'm experiencing, as I'm not paralyzed while this is happening. Any idea or suggestions are welcome and appreciated. I'm worried I'm going to go crazy from stress and sleep deprivation. I used to be a long life skeptic. I don't believe in the supernatural, in God, or in anything like that. And although it sounds cliche, since I've been living in the colonial city of Querétaro, I've started to have my doubts. Seriously. It all began when we went to explore the back of a friend's house who owns a restaurant. In the center of the city, all the houses are old, and this house was no exception. My friend, two other friends, and I went there. Suddenly, my friend and one of the friends stayed at the threshold of one of the doors. I asked them what was wrong, and both claimed with a weird look on their face that there were ghosts there. I scoffed at them, telling them they were crazy, and I continued on. I didn't see or feel anything. They both insisted that they felt something, I guess because they are empathetic to the paranormal, which I recently learned. Every time I wanted to go to that place for dinner, my friend refused. She said there was very negative energy there. I went back many times, and nothing happened. The only thing I could witness with my own eyes was during a New Year's party we celebrated there. Three of my friends were surprised by something. I saw how a strand of one of their curly hair inexplicably remained horizontal. I didn't think anything of it. In fact, I found it funny. They just laughed, nervously. And that was the only thing that happened that day. Now that I remember, it was surprising, but I remained in denial. Sometime later, when I had the chance, I asked the owners of that house if they had also seen or felt anything strange. They replied that they personally hadn't. The only incident was when they were renovating the bottom floor of the house, and they unearthed a tombstone with more than 100 years of history. Beneath what they say was the printing press of the convent of La Cruz. They also told me that many customers and employees of their restaurant had made comments about something or someone lurking in that part of the house. The only concrete story came from a kitchen assistant who told me that he had seen a little girl, and he was really scared, to the point of quitting that job. A few years passed, and I liked to visit a downtown craft beer bar at night. I chatted with the bartender at the bar while talking about craft beer most of the time. One time the topic came up, and he told me that almost when it was closing time, around 2:30 a.m., he saw a man leaning against the wall next to one of the refrigerators at the entrance. There, as if he were drunk, but he wasn't a real person. He said that the apparition didn't speak or do anything. It just appeared there. Obviously, I didn't. 6 years after moving to this city, my friend accompanied me to another craft beer place, also located in the downtown area of the city. We had an event, and after it ended, she sat alone at one of the tables while I went to greet and chat with other attendees and friends. Suddenly, she called me and asked me to please leave. She was very insistent. I asked her why, and she replied that she felt a ghost and that it had actually pushed her and moved the bench. I reluctantly agreed, not without telling her she was overreacting. Some time passed, and I went back to that beer bar. Sometimes I chatted with the owner and sometimes with the waiter. One time I asked the waiter if there were ghost stories there and he said yes. I let him tell me whatever he wanted without specific questions. He didn't give me many details, but he said that it used to be an old-style tavern cantina in Spanish, and in the back room where my friend said she was pushed, there was the ghost of a woman, most likely a prostitute, or she probably was there because she had been murdered there. It was that day and that moment when I started to believe people who claimed to see or feel ghosts. Now I genuinely fear that I might perceive them someday. I feel it now as I write this. Look, I don't believe in ghosts or much supernatural stuff. I never have. I am a Christian, so I do believe in demons, but not manifestations or hauntings. Mostly just that we can be misled by our own selfish desires, etc. I think that entertaining those selfish thoughts and getting bad habits and addictions are the demons we have to battle and fear in life. However, one afternoon, I was home alone. My wife was out running errands. I spent a lot of time home alone, so it wasn't unusual in any way. I was sitting up in my room on my computer, as I often was, scrolling through social media or watching videos when I heard my wife come in the front door. It sounded like she was carrying some plastic grocery bags from shopping. This was a pretty common occurrence as she loves making excuses to get out of the house, and I'm more of a homebody. I got the notification on my phone that the kitchen had sensed movement. The doorway in the kitchen leads out into our entry hallway, so you can see people pass by the kitchen door as they cross the hall. Then the living room camera alerted shortly after. Again, nothing unusual. We have kids, so we set the cameras up in the family areas to keep an eye on them when they play video games and such. They come in handy when the kids get in arguments or try lying to us. They also allow us to speak to them if we run errands and leave them home alone. They're older. So after taking note of the alerts, I kept scrolling away, awaiting my wife to come upstairs to the bedroom. After about 20 minutes or so, I couldn't hear her, and the motion alerts had stopped. The feeling you get when someone is in your house, well, that feeling was gone. I listened closely but couldn't hear anything. "Babe?" I called towards the stairs, but there was no response. I got off the bed and started down the steps, calling for her as I went, but there was no response. I checked all the rooms and was puzzled that she wasn't there. I knew for certain I had heard her, and I definitely felt her presence in the house. I stepped outside to see if she had ran back to the car for something, but her car was not there. Now I was really puzzled. But I eventually arrived at the conclusion that she had forgotten something and ran back to town. I thought it was strange she didn't come up and say anything. Maybe she had thought I was napping. I made my way back up the stairs and decided I would give her a call. I called her cell phone, and when she picked up, I asked her where she had went. She said she was still out running errands. I asked, "Why didn't you come up and see me when you stopped by a minute ago?" She replied, "What do you mean? I've been gone for a couple hours." "What?" I said. "You were down there for like 10 minutes. I heard you come in carrying bags. There was a motion alert and everything. I swore it was you. Who the hell else would have came in?" There was a pause as we both considered this. She started to get worried and said I should check the cameras. I agreed and told her I would call back shortly. Now my heart was starting to pound a little bit. Who the hell came into my home? Why did they walk in then leave? Had they taken anything? Was this the first time? Were my children safe here? Nervously, I pulled up our motion cameras on my phone and started to scroll through the kitchen footage to just before I had walked down the steps. I pressed play on the recording and waited. I heard a slam and a few knocking sounds like someone was coming inside. Then the grocery bag noises started. Now my heart was really pounding. Someone had definitely came inside, and I was about to watch them stroll through my home. As I leaned in closer to the screen, a dark shadow suddenly loomed into view and crossed my entry hallway past the kitchen door. I could make it out plain as day as it passed by. I was in complete disbelief. What in the hell was that? The camera was slightly distorted from it. It didn't really have a shape that was recognizable. It was just a shadowy, shapeless cloud. I switched to the living room camera and played it again. Same noises, only this time I watched in full view as the shadow came from the hallway into the center of the living room. Then the entire room went dim on the camera. This was mid-afternoon. Were the cameras messing up? No. I had heard and felt someone in my home. I've been here 10 years and never been wrong. What was this thing? The scariest part, just as I came down the stairs on recording, the room lit back up again like normal. It was like a sunny day when a dark cloud rolls over and your whole room goes dim. only there was not a cloud in the sky that day. I have never been more terrified in my life as I was sitting in the house alone, watching the footage of me walking down the stairs towards whatever the hell it was that I saw. I watched it over and over in disbelief. I knew I heard someone walk into my house. I felt their presence. There was no question in my mind that my wife had come home. Only she hadn't. It was just noises and a strange shadow. I have never once been one to be afraid of doors moving, strange noises, or thought someone was in my home when there was no one there. I've always just been able to tell when someone comes into my home from the familiar sounds and feeling. In fact, it's never happened since. I called my mom. I was so freaked out. I explained what happened and showed the footage. She shrugged it off, as did my wife. In hindsight, I guess it wasn't really much to see. Some noises and a weird shadow, easily explained away with logic when you didn't have the feeling of knowing someone was there to accompany it. But to me, it was the most terrifying experience and the closest encounter I had ever experienced to anything supernatural. I don't believe in ghosts. I never really have. But I know something or someone was in my home that day.